I notice when people want to connect, they go to big events. And the
Mm,
big events almost always deliver exclusively superficial experiences. Go to a festival, go to a concert, go to a food, a food pop-up, and you'll get food, you'll hear a band, but very few people leave with new, intimate relationships that they can call upon for years to come. So the second one that goes along with the first, they think the events that generate friendships, kind of friendships we actually want, happen in experiences that look glamorous.
so good.
Or, and in fact, if you think of all the friends that you would call tonight, Liz, if there was a bad diagnosis in your family and you need support for the next 2 weeks, my guess is the experiences you had with those people, such that now you would call them tonight for that help, those events did not look glamorous.
Hi, Charles. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm so excited to learn more from you and very excited for our listeners to either meet you or learn more about the work you're doing in the world.
Well, I'm delighted to be invited.
Will you start off by sharing a little bit about the Charles story? And specifically, I'm interested in, are there any moments in your story that we would define as a pluck up, which is really just a challenging season or a mistake or a wrong turn? And specifically, as it relates to now your work, your passion, your research, your teaching in the realm of community, loneliness, relational health. Are there a few moments from your story that you can look back on where you experienced an acute sense of pain or frustration kind of in this realm?
There are so many experiences I can recall where there was acute pain, and I had to acknowledge that my strategies, whatever efforts I was making, were obviously not working. But I know that we're not going to be talking for hours. So, for the purposes of an example, I remember when I entered the Peace Corps, and I was very, very excited for a number of reasons to start Peace Corps service. This is way back in 1999. So the world was very different there, before 9/11, before the pandemic,
Mm,
before cell phones.
yeah.
And I was excited to go in the Peace Corps. And one of the things I was really excited about was meeting the other Peace Corps volunteers I would serve with, because I was excited that I would meet people that I thought had a similar thirst for adventure and a similar commitment to service as I had, that was drawing me to the Peace Corps, to leave my family and my friends for over 2 years and go to a country I'd never visited before, to learn a language I literally didn't know the name of, to live in a village I couldn't point to on a map. And I was just super excited to meet those people, and knowing that some of them could turn into friends for, without exaggeration, the rest of my life. And this is going to sound really disrespectful, and I need to make clear that there are Peace Corps volunteers that I did meet are out there that kind of met that standard. But I remember when I got there, it became clear that a number of the volunteers I was serving with back then, a generation ago, many of them were there just to get a line item to get into grad school.
Mm.
And then others were there, honestly, to have a lifestyle for a couple of years. They didn't have real responsibilities, and they could get drunk and high where no one would bother them, because they were away from home and
That
where they had
feels like
responsibilities.
so much work to end up in a situation just so you can get drunk and high. But there you
They
go.
may not have articulated it that that was it, but it was clear that a huge benefit of service
Yeah.
was they were dropped off somewhere where they could get high and they could afford beer all the time, because beer is far cheaper in
Yeah.
where we were living.
Yeah.
As a point of reference, I don't drink alcohol in general. My body doesn't like it. Wasn't interested in getting high. And for me, joining Peace Corps was about finding a way to serve. But I knew I could serve the United States. I could make a difference here. In fact, I had been working on that. So the Peace Corps service was, in large part, me finding what my limits were. And I found them physically, mentally, spiritually, culturally, whatever it was, I found it. But you can imagine that when I showed up with all of this intention, and then to meet people that I thought we were going to really sync, and then finding out they had very different aspirations and invested themselves very, very differently, that was a shock. And all of a sudden, at some level, there was also a level of support network that I kind of assumed would be there, that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't there in the way that I thought it would be there. And there's another, stark reality of the Peace Corps. Peace Corps at the time, may still be the case, are people who are wealthy enough that they, or from families that are wealthy enough that they can go overseas, largely not make any money, and not worry about paying for the medical care or the education of siblings or family members. And virtually all of us were college educated, which is to say we were part of the minority of Americans who could get a bachelor's degree at least, and then healthy enough to go overseas and trust that that wouldn't be just fundamentally a life-threatening experience, which is to say people with education, money, and healthcare. And that largely means white suburban people. And I was growing up in California. I'm obviously have mixed ethnicity. And so here I was with people, many of them had never had friends who were not white. And we were overseas, and I was told to my face by another Peace Corps volunteers as a point of example that I, Charles, was not a real American. And it doesn't matter that my family on both sides have been in this country since which side you pick, the 1880s or the early 1700s, before the country was a country, in fact. As far as these Peace Corps volunteers were concerned, I wasn't a real American because I didn't look like them. And the great irony is I was told this while I was representing the United States in a program to do exactly that.
Yeah.
Right. So what I'm trying to communicate is I expected to find this particular camaraderie and syncing of values and this commitment, and it just wasn't there at the level that I expected.
Hmm.
That was
So,
a mistake in my part to like filter, who are the people who are
yeah.
sharing my values and I want to commit to the level I want to commit to.
Yeah. One of the concepts in there that I think is interesting is around expectation in relationship. And I'm even as I'm saying this out loud, I feel like I'm verbally processing because I see two sides of this coin. On the one hand, I think in your story, one of my takeaways would be like, oh yeah, when you have such high expectations, I think the when you experience the delta between this is what I thought it was going to be and this is what it is, it's even more painful than if you go in and you're just like, I don't have a lot of expectations. So there's a sense of, do we have this lesson where it's like we want to have less expectations in relationship? But then I'm immediately like, I don't think that works because I think expectations and intentionality are so closely tied. And I know in my life, some of my richest, most beautiful relationships actually came out of like an expectation that you are going to be a meaningful, important person in my life. And I'm going to treat you like that. And it's almost like my action towards that relationship and my expectation is what actually cultivated it into the relationship that I was hoping it would be. So this is where I feel kind of like I'm like, well, so what's the takeaway here for us? What are some of your thoughts or reflections specifically around the expectation that we bring into community and relationship? How can we do that in a way that's healthy and that has the greatest opportunity to serve us and in others?
It's difficult for me to answer that because there's several layers there, right? Um, if someone befriends me and expects me to be a fantastic basketball player, that's just not going to work. Right. It doesn't matter if I say, look, I've never played basketball. I don't like basketball. I don't have a physical body that's good for basketball. And they say, yes, but I already expect you to be a great basketball player for our team. And I'm investing. Well, they're just setting this entire endeavor up for failure. And yet there is some truth that the people we meet on the day we meet them are not going to be the people we're going to know a year from now or 5 years from now, because we all mature and change. And much of that maturation change is going to happen because of the experiences we create together, be they coworkers or neighbors or fellow students, right? So that's why it's difficult for me to respond to that, because there's a gradient then
Right.
of what we can invest in and then what's just fantasy. With that said, I think part of the lessons that I teach in my work is we have to draw boundaries on who we're investing in. And, you asked me earlier what, mistakes I've made. Like one of the mistakes that came to my mind was when I was a filmmaker. I was living in New York City. Our film pretty quickly got pretty notable funding from PBS funding arms, which in the world of documentary film in the United States and certainly in New York City made us a notable film team, because we weren't just in our garage telling our moms we're making films, but PBS expected to air us and said the work was good. And I was young enough and experienced enough to not know that there are a lot of people who just want to hang out with, I want to use the term artists generally, or I'll just in a very broad term say successful artists, because they think that successful artists are more interesting than them or the people they normally hang out with at work. And what that meant was people just wanted our time because they wanted our time. And I had work to do. I didn't have a rich uncle that was funding my work. I was a producer who needed to fundraise for a film about a genocide surviving family. And I couldn't do it forever. And I only had so many hours a day. And I didn't have time to hang out at your parties or at your beach house or at your picnic just because you wanted me there. I needed to have a stronger boundary on who gets my attention. And the early days, I didn't understand that. And so we got a lot of invitations, and my early thinking was, oh, great, look at all these people, many of them successful, and say they're interested in my work, and they want to spend time with me. I should go, because the only way we're going to be successful is we find the people who are interested in what we're doing, want to support, get on board. And if I don't get out there and meet them, hey, I'm never going to win. And it took me years to figure out, wow, they're just using us as entertainment.
Mm.
They just want to introduce us to their friends to show them that they have interesting friends. And to be really clear, it wasn't just me, right? It was the dancers and the composers and the playwrights and whatever. But we were just entertainment.
Mm.
And I finally figured it out when I realized this was a one-way street, right? And so one of the mistakes was I wasn't more precious
Mm.
in choosing who gets my waking time when it's clear I don't have enough waking time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think something that I see is really common is when people kind of cross the threshold and they're like, okay, relationships matter, community matters, it's worth investing in. There is kind of this sense of, so I just need to say yes more. I need to show up to more things. I need to be more social versus the kind of counterintuitive instinct of going, what if it's not that you need to say yes more? It's just that your yeses need to be more thoughtful, more intentional, more aligned. You know, if you've got 3 hours a month to be spending on your social health, which hopefully it's more than that,
If you have 3 hours a month, your social health is going to be terrible.
it's going to be terrible. It's going to be
'Cause we're
terrible.
looking at 36 a year. Just give up now. Just stop pretending it's going to work. It's like, I do 3
Go get
push-ups a
some
week.
Doritos and be a
Like, you
hoarder.
know what?
Yes.
Forget the 3 push-ups. Start eating more fiber. Yeah.
So let's very much so agreed. Let's, for the sake of, because I can't do great math in double digits on the fly, you've got 3 hours a month. Instead of spending, 6 30-minute chunks with different people, my suggestion would be spend those 3 hours with the same people over and over again to invest in those a small group of ongoing relationships. And I think your boundary concept of asking the question of who are those people and what is the purpose? Like, what's the hope for how we're going to spend this time is so valuable.
Yeah. And for clarity, for those who haven't read my work, it can be a very generous boundary, but it's not no boundary.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not anybody who wants me at their birthday party. Right. Because I can't go to 40 birthday parties where all I'm doing is being interesting for people who don't really want to support me at any level. And I don't even mean equal reciprocity. I mean largely zero,
Yeah.
because that's
Yeah.
what we were experiencing. But I think it's important to speak to something here. There's a continuum of experience. And if I live in Berkeley, California, if I moved to Berkeley by myself and didn't know anybody, I better be saying yes. Not only saying yes, I better be extending invitations others can say yes to. Because that's a math equation. If I send 0 invitations out and I make 0 yeses, then in a year from now, I'll know 0 people better. That's how that works.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there's a math equation. If I do that more, that number will be different a year from now.
Mm-hmm.
But you and I are old enough that we are not on day one. And at some point, we're going to, for the purpose of this conversation, hit the Dunbar number. And for those who don't know, the Dunbar number refers to research that says nobody can maintain relationships above 150 of them. Now, I don't know if that's a firm number. It might be some people it's 90 and other people it's 180. But the point is it's not 850.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever it is, there is a limit. So once I've said yes enough and I've gone to events where I was able to create connections, invested in growing them, at some point, the math no longer works.
Mm-hmm.
Liz says, I want to invite you to this group, and you and I get these invitations all the time. You tell me if I'm wrong. I want you to come to this event, Liz. It would be good for you to know these people, right? How many times a year do you get that invitation, right? And I don't know about you, but it's like, I can't see the people I want to see now enough each year. Here's what I don't need: people I don't know. I don't know why you're introducing to them, and I don't know how they're good for me. And then we're going to add them to the pile of people I can't actually see and develop a real relationship with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, if you say, Charles, I have a friend and she's doing this thing and you had success with it, you had mentioned that you'd be helpful. Will you spend an hour answering some questions? Well, I was like, yes, because now we have an intention,
Right.
right?
Right.
And I can be helpful, not we'll see if they're good, if it's good for me to know her.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not that I'm unwilling to meet people, but I understand, look, the math doesn't work. And that's why I'm more precious. When I was fundraising for the film and producing the film, I had all the relationships with my crew and all the relationships with our funders. I had relationships with people who said they wanted to be involved. I couldn't hang out at 10 birthday parties and meet 10 people each one, and then there's 100 new people, and Dunbar says 150 is max. So that's where I got there. It's not about being a snob. It's about
Yeah.
understanding where are we in our maturation in developing the community that's important for the life we're trying to live.
So good. So there's two things that you shared that I think are so powerful. One is recognizing, like any other endeavor, the appropriate, most beneficial action is entirely dependent on where in the journey you are. So I loved your point about, like, yes, if you are in the early stages, if you are just flat out like, I haven't invested in relationships, I'm lonely, I don't have community, I don't have connection, I have nowhere to start. Yes, you say yes to everything. In fact, my husband and I, when we were starting our company, we traveled the United States. We lived out of the back of our car for 6 months, and we had a rule. We were just like, we are in it. Unless it violates our ethics or we think we will be in like bodily harm, our spirit for this season of life is like, we're gonna say yes. And that served us so well during this season of life. That same rule does not apply 15 years later. And so I think, to your point, folks really early on in the journey, I think, make the mistake sometimes of being too selective, where it's like, no, you like, beggars can't be choosers. Like, say yes to the thing that you get invited to. And I think, to your point, what are you putting out into the world to just like increase the kind of numbers game that you are like going from no social interaction to just like being in a space with people?
I have many thoughts. One of my responses I want to make is there are names for this. It's not just Liz and Charles's opinion. So the early stage, as you refer to it, is called the expansion stage, right? If I want to be a great filmmaker and I don't know filmmakers or filmmakers who are getting films out or filmmakers who are funded, or if I don't know them, I need to be in an expansion stage where I need to go find those people and invite them to have experiences. That might be lunch. That might be standing together at a film festival and chatting, right? That could be volunteering on their project. So I learn how they organize their crew. Whatever it is, I need to be expanding my experience and my relationships so that we can knit together those relationships of support. So we call that an expansionist role in an expansionist time. At some point, expansionism run wild is not going to work, right? I'm going to know 500 filmmakers. I'm going to know their lawyers and their accountants and their animators and their insurance people. It's like, I can't. So that's when we enter a convening stage, where I already know the filmmakers I want to know or need to know to do what I want to do as a filmmaker, and I have someone to call for help whenever I have it. But if I want to have those relationships in my life and make them robust, I need to convene. I need to be hosting the coffees or the after festival gatherings or the birthday parties or the film launches, whatever it is. I'm convening the people I already know. And you were talking about mistakes. The mistakes I find that people make not understanding this is twofold. One is people who are still in expansion stage and see it's working, talk to people like you and me as if we're in expansion stage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when they say you should fly out to Santa Fe and come to this retreat. It's only $5,000. These are people who are good to know. And you and I are thinking, do you know any people I know who are good to know that I don't have time? If I was going to spend $5,000 to spend with people, it would be with people I already know who want to see me, right? In New York, right? And so they don't understand, oh, we're in different stages. That's not to say we won't meet your friends. If you say, Charles, you've written several books, you've found a way to say something important in a time we're in a lot of pain, and I have 5 friends who wanna do that in the next 10 years, and they're at the beginning. Could you spend half a day with us from 9 a.m. to noon and share how they can start the journey? Oh, yes, is the answer.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I'm not an expansionist, I'm convening, and now you're introducing people who wanna make a difference with a message, and I have some experience with that, and I can help.
Yeah.
The other challenge is that when, people reach us and they think that we're expansionists, they don't speak to us as conveners. They don't give us that intention that says, "Please, give me time even though you're not an expansionist, because this speaks to the values and purpose you're living by."
Mhm.
I want to help 30-year-olds who have 10 years experience in their field, that understand people with 1 year in their field are struggling, and they can end that if they have a better reach them, because I've now spent 20 years saying things.
Right.
Okay, now we have an intention, or as I would say in my book, we have a shared value and purpose. Now there's reason for us to connect, even though I'm out of expansions, and that's why I'm not a snob categorically. But if you say, "Hey, Charles, I'm the best commercial real estate developer in the northern Denver area. You should hang out with my friends. Are good to know." It's like, not this weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so there's the stages alignment and intention, and then, even as we talk about Dunbar's number, there's also the circles, concentric circles within that, right? So
Yeah, right.
our ability to maintain 150 relationships, that really is more, we're talking acquaintances, we're talking
That's right.
like these aren't close friends, and then I think it's 15 to 17 in kind of the friend category, and then it goes all the way down to 3 to 5, I think it is, in the intimate friend category. This is
Yeah,
obviously different. Go ahead.
I take those numbers as really squishy, because I have found people have radically different capacities,
For
and
sure.
I'm one of those people where I have. If we talk about people I could call if my house burns down, and they would do anything, it's a big number for me, just because my skills and capacity are high. And of course, those relationships are reciprocal. So the number of people who call me when their house is burning and I would get in my car in the middle of the night in a rainstorm is a pretty high number. And for some people, that number is 0 to 3. So, which is
Totally.
to say, when we talk about the concentric rings, I think it's not that helpful, but we can acknowledge that we're not going to have 150 people that we want them to call us in a rainstorm when their house is burning to
Yeah.
come pick them up.
I think what's most helpful, at least for me, about the concept is just acknowledging that there are rings, right?
Yes.
Where it's like acknowledging that as we talk about intention with like, well, where am I on the spectrum? What stage am I in? I think
Mhm.
another thoughtful pattern to have is thinking about, is this an acquaintance? Is this a friend? Or is this a close friend? And then really rightly ordering our time and our yeses and our intention around that. Because I think a lot of people, if you don't even just have, let's take the numbers away. If you don't have the visual of the circle, it makes people feel, I think there's some people who tend to be overgivers or people pleasers, where it's like if somebody in that 150 is asking for time and space and they have kind of the same rules and framework that they're running that request through that they do their best
Oh, the
friends.
top 10. Yeah.
Totally. That's where they're feeling, I'm totally overwhelmed. I can't do this. I'm spending all of my time and energy with people, and yet I feel lonely, disconnected, sometimes used or unknown. So I think that kind of framework of and it's going to be different for everybody, and what capacity we have to give to a best friend versus what capacity we have to give to an acquaintance. But I think rightly ordering and kind of having an internal framework is really helpful for when we think about how useful or intentional our time, our yeses, our commitment is. And I think it makes you feel like less of a jerk, right? At least for me, I'm like, the reason that I'm saying no to this thing in the 150 outer ring is because that's actually enabling me to say a bigger, more robust yes to maybe somebody in that secondary or even, primary ring of connectedness and
Well,
intentionality.
and I'm guessing that, you and I also had the same experience. Is the truth is people think we're jerks, and they think we're snobs. And, I've written books on community, and I meet people, often at social gatherings, where they assume that means that I wanna hang out with everybody all the time,
Mhm.
wherever there's a community. And the irony is they don't know that the first principle I write about in the first book is the boundary principle.
Yeah.
And the reason I write about that is exactly this conversation, that if you don't understand that, you're setting yourself up for efforts of inevitable failure. And so I'm actually really precious about that.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. I live in Berkeley and I have a son. It's important to me that I know other parents in Berkeley. It's important that I know the parents of my son's friends. And I know that if I don't schedule Friday evenings, Saturday evenings, and Sunday afternoons in getting to know them, I won't. Full
Yeah.
stop. I won't.
Yeah.
It's just math.
Yeah.
And I want to have those friends for presumably at least 20 years. Well, guess what? That's a lot of Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Not all of them, but it's a lot.
Mhm.
And then I'm involved in a small church in East Oakland. And one of the reasons I'm involved is I want to be part of a community that is committed for generosity and gathers not to show off clothes or cars, but wants to support each other in a really difficult time in the economy for a lot of people. And I want to be connected to people who are not of my little tribe here in Berkeley who writes books and talks to microphones. Well, guess what? That's a lot of Sundays and other nights. And we haven't even talked about book authors or clients or future clients or presidents of associations. Those are just people involved in church ministry and parents that I know are important to my family's health. And then we can add family. So you can see, if you look at my year, there's only 52 weeks. 1 week's going to be Easter, 1 week's going to be Christmas, then that's Thanksgiving. So there's less than 52. And we start dividing that up and we start putting in a bunch of communities that I'm invested in. Very precious time. And it's not because I'm a jerk. It's I'm already spending time with people who I recognize shared value and purpose are important for my health and my family's welfare.
That's so good. Yeah, you're not wrong. I don't believe that intimacy, vulnerability, and connection can actually scale, largely because of the reasons that you're talking about, right? Like we have a certain amount of capacity. And even when it gets down to like what happens with specific numbers in the room, oh shoot, it's eluding me. What's the connection?
The Brooks lines of
Yes.
communication.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Like no one wants to be the jerk who's just kind of like, sorry, you're not allowed in the club. Um, but I think the sense was, no, if you're like a good person and you believe in community, inclusivity should be your highest goal. And exclusivity is kind of wrong, bad, you're a jerk, you're a snob.
I'm so glad you referenced that because that is a well-meaning and totally misguided understanding of what community looks like. And when we and so I write in the book, I guess that you need to have a boundary, and we're talking a lot about the importance of boundary now. But the boundary isn't there just to declare that we're better than other people. You could use it that way. That's just not the way that
Sure.
I mean
Yeah.
it. The boundary there is to ensure that people on the inside share the requisite values and or purpose. So I want to be friends in my community with other parents who want kids in Berkeley to grow up safe and healthy and are willing to invest in that not only for their own family selfishly, but also extend themselves to other families, whatever that may mean, right? Um, if you're not interested in supporting families grow healthy and safe in Berkeley, that's do what you like to do.
Right.
That's just not you're not coming over for curry at my house on Friday night when we're inviting parents over. Like, that's
Right.
just how it is.
Yeah.
And so it's not that we're declaring better, it's that we're keeping the inside safe.
Hmm.
You can Google it right now for those who are listening. They're called the Brooks lines of communication. And it shows that the number of communication lines, or I would like to say relationships getting managed in any given group, goes up far faster than linearly when we add people to a group. In fact, it's so quick that if we add a sixth person to a group of 5, we increase the number of relationships getting managed in that unit by fully 50%. So we add a 50% burden of relationships getting managed. When we add the 7th person, so just 2 more than 5, we more than double the number of relationships getting managed. So by the time we get to 10, certainly by 15, it's literally unmanageable for intimacy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think these are the things, and I love putting just like, I think to your point, naming the concepts can help. It helps so much in making it feel less emotional, less personal, less like, just like, oh, it's organic and it just like happens. And instead being like, no, it's just like everything else. Like there's kind of a system, a process, things that work. And when we realize that, I think that just helps us drive intention. But I do think it can also, when we can talk about it with that language, all of a sudden it's not like you two aren't allowed in the club. It's like, here's the reasoning behind this. And again, to your point, it's not about exclusion. It's about creating and protecting what already exists. All
And
that to say it
let me
was
also pile
really
on
a
top, because
painful
I know we have a lot
process.
of people listening. Everything we're talking about can be used maliciously. And so there are examples of people using it maliciously, and we are not advocating that or denying it. We're just saying that these ideas are important and can be used in a generous and rich way. And when you go find people claiming they're using a generous way, but it's an abhorrent application, we recognize that that is also true.
Sure. Yes, that's a very good disclaimer. But I think getting at the kind of general sense that like inclusivity is good and exclusivity is bad. Those are the types of kind of just hyperbolic,
Exactly right.
moralistic
Hyperbolic.
things that we just have to go like, no, that's actually it's so much more nuanced than that. And same with the intention.
The example I use when people ask first time is I say if there's a group of lactating first time mothers, breastfeeding first time mothers, um, in our neighborhood, I should not be there.
Right.
And I'm not allowed to say, hey, my mom breastfed me and I'm married to a woman who breastfed. I can be here. No, Charles, get out.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's not because I'm a bad person. It's because I'm not a breastfeeding first time mom.
Right. Yes. And I do think that there is something so powerful about naming what you're doing. I had a friend walk through a very painful situation with kind of a proximate neighborhood, people living together. She moved in. It didn't go well. There was never the sense that there was like a sense of belonging. And I think one of the most clear things to me in that situation was there was no naming there was no articulating of the unarticulated. The moment you say, this is who we are, this is why we're doing what we're doing, this is the purpose, it can feel so like intense or again exclusive. It is actually so kind to the people around you for that exact reason, because then you can walk away and go, oh, I'm not in that group because I'm not a breastfeeding mother,
Yeah,
not like
that's right.
this cool club is meeting and it's clear they don't want me in. I'm not really sure why. And most of us, as just kind of insecure, tender human beings, are going to come up with a story. It's, I'm annoying. I'm not cool enough. I'm not good enough. Maybe there was something I said or I did in the past. There is actually such kindness in articulating what is a lot of times left unarticulated in community and relationships for that exact. It's actually a very loving thing to do versus like, oh,
Can
but
be.
we don't want to come across as like clicky, so we don't want to name it. And it's like, oh, you're probably going to confuse a lot of people in the process. To your point, yes, it can be. It can also be very cruel and used
That's
to,
exactly right.
yes,
And
manipulate and
that's
oppress
important to
people.
say because naysayers who want to rebut us are going to point to people who are using fairly neutral, possibly generous principles in abhorrent ways and say,
Right,
well, I remember a time when. And they're right. Those were terrible examples of people
right,
using an idea that could be powerful for connection, for division.
right. It's like a fence. Like a fence can be used,
Yeah,
there's
that's
that
right. That's
study about the
exactly right.
kids on the playground that it's like, oh, actually, when there is a fence around the playground, kids use up more of the space. They feel actually safer knowing what the edge of the playground is. They'll explore more, they'll be more free. The fence keeps the children safe and it actually helps create freedom. But it's a fence, but it creates freedom. We obviously know that you fence a group of people in that don't want to be in a location and all of a sudden it is a tool for oppression
Oppression.
and manipulation. And so I think these tools and concepts in community building, all other tools, can be used for good, can be used for evil,
Yeah.
but it's
And
important to
this, you
acknowledge.
mentioned earlier that you talk to people who say, oh, community just happens naturally. It's
Mm,
organic. You can't create it. In my experience, they got lucky. But because they got lucky, they don't know how to make it better. They
yeah,
don't know how to do it again. They don't know how to expand it. And they might get lucky again. And then when you and I show up and say, well, you did get lucky, but notice all these things that happened that were lucky for you that made that possible. Notice that if we take any of these things away, right? If we take away the fact that you trusted that they had shared values and purpose, they wanted to bike together safely, right? Notice that you had a lot of experiences for several hours where you not distracted so much that you couldn't learn about your formations of one another. Notice that there were experiences of peril that you then got evidence that others would care for you without a transactional relationship,
mhm,
right? Notice that there was somebody who was inviting you so you know where to bring your bike, what time to show up, and how long you'd be there. Notice that all those were in place. If nobody invited you, if you never had long hours where you weren't distracted, if you never got a chance to find out how they formed and what their values were, and you never saw evidence that they cared for you, my guess is you wouldn't have this community.
right. Yeah, that's
You
so
got
good.
lucky in your bike group. God bless ya. but it wasn't organic, you got lucky.
Totally. It's like the lottery is not a financial planning strategy,
Yes,
but it
exactly right.
happened. You won it, and that's great. So I think we have folks that got lucky and then assume community is more organic. And then I think there's another group of folks who watch other people and actually they don't see the behind the scenes. Maybe there was an incredible amount of intentionality, structure, focus. All they see is the output of, the manifestation of all of the structure. And they go, well, those people, they got lucky. And because I don't have that, I'm over here, I'm lonely, I'm disconnected, and I think that puts folks in a posture of, well, one, they don't have agency. If you think that life happens because of luck, so you're gonna sit around and you're gonna wait. The other thing that I think is gonna happen is we get really tied to the idea that friendships and relationship and community feel super organic and natural and there's chemistry. So when we're in those early building stages that are not oftentimes very organic, or like sometimes they're just clunky and they're awkward and they kind of feel like a little bit forced.
And if you're doing it right, there's quite a bit of failure
So much failure, just in so many just cringy moments, right? Where it's just like, oh, we tried that and it was
or
forced,
painful moments,
or
right? Like,
painful
wow, we
moments,
never
right?
want to do that again.
Totally. But if we associate, if kind of the idol is chemistry, organic, easy friendship, the moment we experience pain, awkwardness, frustration, embarrassment, it's like this little red flag that we're like, oh, okay, these aren't my people. These aren't my people. This isn't the situation. I'll go somewhere else and I'll try again. And they kind of just get stuck in this little loop. And it's like, oh man, the requisite passage is actually it's so awkward, man. It's so awkward. It's so uncomfortable. It can be, it can, to your point, be not just awkward, but painful. And I think we do that with like family relationships. I think we have a better right understanding of like most people, I think are like, hey, you're 30 years into marriage and you have a healthy, thriving marriage. My guess is you worked on it. There was intention, there was thought, there was conflict. The conflict, you learned how to repair. I think with our kids, we largely are like, yeah, raising kids isn't easy. And lots of times and then with friendship and community, I think we have more of this just kind of like, it's like if they're my people, it'll feel good from the beginning and want to kind of shortcut
Oh, I'm going
those.
to pile on here, Liz. I've also discovered that a lot of people haven't gotten far enough where they understand they need to be someone other people want to spend time with,
Ooh, yeah. That's
right?
good. Say
And so the
more.
complaining is, I don't have community or there's no community here. And then I don't need to spend very long with them to realize, well, I understand why people aren't seeking you out. Now, that doesn't mean you need to dance and juggle every time you're there, but it does mean you need to be someone that when someone is tired, they are distracted by the exhaustion of parenthood, right? That they can be with anybody they want to be with, that you are on a list of people worth spending time with, that
Mm-hmm.
you're curious about other people, that you talk about things that are not just you mad about how the world is. And one example that comes in my mind is my wife and I have been hosting long dinner parties for now 20 years. And I'm talking conservatively 50 a year. And by virtue of this, I'm a pretty good cook and I have a number of chef friends. And so sometimes these meals get really elaborate because my chef friends go crazy. And over those many years, I've discovered there's a lot of people who love coming to our dinner parties. And they never realized that our entire relationship is they love it when I and sometimes my friends spend 5 to 6 hours making a meal and then they enjoy it. Look, I'm not against that. That is not a robust friendship,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
If you not once invited me to go to a blues festival that you're already going to and said, I'd love you to join me, Charles, we've enjoyed so many hours at your home. Or, hey, I'm having a birthday party and I'd love for you to come. I can only invite 30 people, but you two have really hosted me a number of times, right? You know, whatevs. If that doesn't happen and you just go on and on how you then guess what? I don't want to be friends with you. And we have a name for that, right? They're extractors. They're extracting good time and they're giving me no evidence that there's a friendship of any level of reciprocity. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, Liz, we've made that list and stopped inviting those people. And I'm certain they wonder how can they stop getting invited?
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
not after one or two or five. It's just like
Sure.
if in 3 years, you just show you like it when I spend 5 to 6 hours preparing a good time for you, we got to move on.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Okay. Well, I feel like that we just covered three common mistakes that people are making in community building. We talked about kind of the importance of boundaries and the conversation around inclusivity and exclusivity, the importance of knowing where on the spectrum of community building and relational health you are, and kind of rightly ordering your actions, and then also aligning your intentions with kind of specifically who people are in your life, what kind of rung they occupy, or what kind of rung you hope that they occupy. And then the third one I think would be a lack of self-reflection, maybe, is how I would kind of phrase that, of
It as an awareness of how we are a person that other people wanna know.
yeah. Now, how
You and
would
I,
you
Liz, meet people who just complain about stuff all the time, and we know how many hours we wanna spend around them.
people feel uninvited, not included, and they don't introspect? There is kind of a sense of, I'm not looking at myself. I'm not thinking about how do I become a better friend? How do I become a better contributor? I think I've seen this very much so, and I'm sure you have. This happens in other places in the world, but I think in America specifically, we have a specific bent towards consumerism that then applies to community and relationships, where there is this sense of like, I show up and I consume. I consume great food. I consume great
Mhm,
conversation.
mhm.
Charles does it for me. That's kind of his deal. I get to benefit from it. And they don't stop to go, how am I creating? How am I being generative? How am I offering?
I think
The
it's an excellent framing
Thank
of
you.
what I see going on.
Yeah, yeah. The other side of it, though, is folks that I think immediately kind of go to, I didn't get invited to the thing, and then they just shame spiral. Like, it is me. I'm not likable. I don't belong. Nobody ever likes me. So what is so it feels like, I don't know if people are just wired one way or the other. Is there any like helpful tool or framework that you've developed or thought of that when a person experiences that, let's use your example. I used to get invited to Charles dinners and now I don't. What do they do? Like, is there like a question that they can ask themselves that will kind of keep them not from not examining themselves, but also not from kind of shame spiraling into just this general sense of, I'm not worthy, I'm not likable, I don't belong, which also isn't helpful.
Right. So in that specific example, right? We talked about the reason we have to let some people go is we're already at max and it's growing. Certainly, they could reach out and say, like, "What's going on? I know we haven't seen you," and then I get to say, "Well, you haven't seen me because you don't invite me to anything," right? And we've hosted you for dozens of hours over the last 3 years, and you've invited me to nothing, so that's why we're not seeing each other, right? And then there's a conversation. What does friendship look like,
Right.
right? And then there's learning. And if they don't make the phone call, I hope they do, but if they don't make the phone call, they could invite anybody to anything, and that includes me. And when I say like invite me to something, like, look, the park is open on Saturday. It's
Totally.
gorgeous. We're going to spend noon to 2 p.m. walking the dogs. Would you love to come? Maybe we'll get ice cream.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, good enough.
Mhm.
I don't know
Mhm.
anybody who gets mad because a neighbor invited them to walk in a park on a sunny day with dogs.
Mhm.
They may not
Mhm.
go, but who gets mad,
Right.
right?
To
And so,
that point being, invitations matter, even if people don't say yes. It's such a
and
signal
that's,
to,
yeah,
I
one of the lessons I
considered
teach.
you.
Invitations matter. And
Yep.
so when you say, I didn't get invited, it must be me. Well, what the complaint is I someone's not generating an invitation for me.
Mhm.
Fine.
Mhm.
Start generating invitation.
Mhm. Yeah. I do think that that feedback loop is very missing in our culture. I think most people don't make the phone call to figure it out because that's terrifying, right? That's really vulnerable and scary to go, I used to get invited. I don't now. Can you give me some insight? And then I think even with the small percentage of people who are courageous enough to do that, on the other side of the phone, there's people that are going, it's so much kinder for me to give some sort of bullshit answer than it is to tell the truth. And like, that's not kindness. Like that delivered in a way that is kind. Sometimes that feedback can be an incredible act of gift of that might be the first time that person has had the thought of like, oh, this is how I'm perceived. This is the impact that I have on other people. And to kind of be nice and to just be like, we're not really doing these dinners that much anymore, or whatever the answer is that isn't
Or
the
how about
truth.
this? My son got hit by a car and we were spending time in the ICU. And you don't know because we don't have a relationship where you would know,
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah,
right?
totally. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so good. Okay, do you have in all of your work and all of your conversations and all of your research, I know there's a lot, but if you were just thinking, what are some of the top 3 pluck ups you feel like people make? And we're assuming these people are already listen, they know loneliness is a problem, they know they want it, they know it's good for them and others. So there is belief, there is desire. They're getting after it. What are 3 common pluck ups that you see people making in their
So
community
pluck
building
ups are
efforts?
mistakes people are making to resolve a challenge, and it's just not working.
Yep. That's how we're defining it today.
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to my mind is I notice when people want to connect, they go to big events, and the
Mm,
big events almost always deliver exclusively superficial experiences. Go to a festival, go to a concert, go to a food, a food pop up, and you'll get food, you'll hear a band, but very few people leave with new intimate relationships that they can call upon for years to come. Um, so the second one that is goes along with the first, they think the events that generate friendships, the kind of friendships we actually want, happen in experiences that look glamorous.
so good.
Or and in fact, if you think of all the friends that you would call tonight, Liz, if there was a bad diagnosis in your family and you need support for the next 2 weeks, my guess is the experiences you had with those people, such that now you would call them tonight for that help. Those events did not look glamorous. It might have looked like cups of coffee, like in your neighborhood. It might have looked like sitting in a car in a parking lot at 11 p.m. So
My
we need to
friends and I joke
understand that
that
the
I have
event.
a annual gathering that I do with my best friends from college. We call it roommate retreat, even though we're no longer roommates. We always joke that they're the least we never post about them on social media because they're so fugly. It's like we're renting a house somewhere in a geographic location that's relatively easy for people to get to, not glamorous. Generally, the house isn't really great because we share the cost to try to keep it inclusive because we're in very different, socioeconomic statuses now. And literally all we do for 4 days, we joke that we are like borderline getting bed sores because we just sit in a living room cultivating conversation. Occasionally we go for walks. The point being, even the walks, a lot of times, they're not pretty. They're not Instagrammable. They're not like the girls' trip of your dreams. Like we're going to Greece. We're doing the thing that feels so aspirational. Oftentimes, they're kinda ugly, and by ugly, I just mean, like, not pretty, not glamorous, and so but it again, it gets in people's heads, man, where they're like, "Yeah, but they have this girl gang, and they go to Greece together on a sailboat," and you're like, "That might be a great time." Listen, I would love to go to Greece on a sailboat with my girlfriends, do not get me wrong, but I think rightly placing so much of the good, meaningful work that happens behind the scenes doesn't ever make it to the internet because it's not glamorous.
Yeah, I think that you tell me if you agree that there is some continuum of the more glamorous an experience is, the less effective the experience is in knitting together relationships of profound support over a lifetime.
I think I mainly agree. Here's where I would disagree, and it's totally based on my sample size of lived experiences, would be intentional international group travel that is done with the intention of creating connections. That can
Right.
that can look
But
so glamorous on the internet, and I believe that behind the scenes, because of the travel and the shared experiences and the new experiences you're having and the processing that you're doing, if you're intentionally doing it, they can be both very glamorous and very profound.
right. And the experience of international travel that helped you knit together those relationships were largely sitting on a bus facing forward,
True. Okay.
sitting in
Yes.
an
Yeah.
airport,
Yeah. So you get your
figuring out.
Instagrammable photos, but
Right.
where
That's right.
you're actually
That's right.
100%, going to, I mean, I take people all over the world, but in East Africa specifically, bus rides,
That's right.
they're long, and sometimes
And
the AC doesn't work. Most meaningful part, the thing that I think more about than anything else, the food, the photos, the experiences we're having, curating, like, who's gonna be in a 5-hour-long van ride together and how I'm using my time in that van. Number 1 most powerful time on that trip is sitting in the vans. You're totally right.
so
And
in
we
some
still make
ways,
it look very glamorous on the internet,
right.
but not with the
And
van
you
pictures.
talked about the trip to Greece. If I planned that trip to Greece with your friends, I said, "Well, I don't want to disappoint Liz." These are her close friends, and Liz has this glamorous lifestyle of international travel. And every hour was filled with a culinary demonstration, an architectural tour, uh, a boat, uh, a boat adventure. Then you wouldn't get that knitting together relationships you're getting bed sores in a rented cabin,
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
right? So the general rule, which has qualifications, still holds, right? The more glamorous the experience, generally, the less good it is at knitting together relationships so that you can call when there's a bad diagnosis in the family.
That's good. That's good. Okay, so the first was we go to big events, we leave feeling lonely and
Hoping that
disconnected.
the connection will happen when they actually happen, intimate experiences. The second
2,
mistake is not understanding that the experiences that knit together relationships are not glamorous and don't look glamorous. And even if you're hanging out with Liz on a boat in Greece, it's the not glamorous time on a 5-hour van ride
when
that
the
actually
oysters
knits together
gave
the relationship.
you food poisoning and you're in the bathroom holding
There
each
you
other's
go.
hair back.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
And then the third one is I've noticed, which goes along with our second mistake, is when people come together to connect, they assume we need to fill that time with entertainment, a movie, a concert, an architectural tour, right? A culinary experience. And those things can be great. Filling our time with entertainment actually distracts from the bed sore time. I might even use that term from now on. I don't know if I will, but like it's a perfectly good image. Like
Like,
when I'm
it's an
creating
image.
friendships over 4 days, we worry about our bed sores because that's what making friends looks like. Not Instagramming us on the Mediterranean, holding up drinks and shooting in the air,
Totally.
right?
Totally. Yep. Yep. If we're going for strong visuals, I think bed sores gets us there, you know. I love it.
Let's
Okay.
let's bed sore friendships. Highest rank on the inner ring. Bed sore friendships.
TM. I love it. I love it. So good. Well, those are 3 really powerful stuff. I mean, the antidote to all of those, I feel like is we probably don't need to go through them. They're pretty self-explanatory, but instead of going to massive big events, thinking about how are you spending your time, just having an eye out for even from the outset, how many people are going to be there? And of course, there are big events, and I know you do a lot of work around event design. How can you take a massive event and actually create 1,000 micro events within that big
That's
event
exactly right.
to kind of create that
That's
space?
exactly right.
And
You
especially
have to
for
program the micro events. And then a friend of mine said something which I thought was brilliant. She said, we need to make sure that at the big event, there's a protected area for cafe culture.
that's good.
So the Liz and Charleses of the world can get away from the noise, get away from the big rooms, and we find those 3 people who are fascinating and have something important to say, and we want to know them better, and we get to find a cafe table, literally or figuratively, where we can hear each other, where no one's got a screen going. By the way, everyone who's listening that creates big events and you're listening to Liz because you want to connect people better, get rid of the damn screens.
Mhm.
If what you want people to do is connect, get rid of the damn screens. Screens should only be on when you're trying to distract people and entertain them. And if you are, great. But you're not listening to us right now because you want to do that. And it drives me insane when I go to events, be they conferences or universities, and I go to a space that's ostensible for connection, and someone has made the great effort to put screens all around us to literally pull our attention.
Yeah,
What the
and
hell
you're
are they
talking kind
thinking?
of big screens, but I also think it applies to I wish people were more bold even with individual usage of phones and in personal devices, which
Yeah.
feels so extreme, and yet the impact this group of women in Portland that eventually turned into my urban commune, which literally started with we meet in a pub every Wednesday night. It's still to this day, it's called Hoo Ho. I don't think I've ever shared this publicly, but it's called Hoo Ho, and that stands for hang up and hang out. And like the number one rule was we all put our cell phones in the middle of the table, and whoever reached for their cell phone had to pay the bill for the entire table. There's just intentionality around going, how are we actually environmentally designing this space? Which again, we were going to a pub. We were poor and drinking beer. And but it was an intentional thought about how is that screen actually taking us away from one another, and we're just afraid. But it's like that was such a simple thing that just completely set the tone for what are we doing here? What's the purpose of this time?
Every time I give an event, somebody in my team tells whoever's bringing me in, Charles is going to have everyone turn off their cell phones, put them away, and it and often enough that we expect it, they freak out.
Yeah. So you do that before like a workshop, a keynote,
Everything. And quite
everything.
frankly, that's the first lesson because
Okay.
people have brought me in because their claim is, "We
Yeah.
wanna teach these people in leadership how to better knit people together in relationships that matter."
Yeah.
Well, guess what? First lesson is, let's get the thing away that our culture is actually worshiping. We can talk through how that's happening. We could. And let's, acknowledge that, we can create a sacred space, a different space with different rules by putting them away. And the research shows, not Charles, the research shows that even having a cell phone in view
Mm-hmm.
erodes the pleasure of our time together. And so my rule is it needs to be where no one can see it. Now,
Yeah. That's
a
good.
bag counts, shelf somewhere else counts, a pocket counts, but we can't even see it. And what I found, and when I do this in rooms, and I've done this in rooms of thousands of people, there is a shift.
Mm-hmm.
And then depending on how long the event is, I just led an event 2 days ago with a bunch of adults. We often have a ritual of returning the phones. And I noticed that people don't want their phones back.
Mm-hmm.
That there's a freak out when there's a suggestion they need to let go of these dear things. But once they've spent 3 hours without it, they want to hold that experience of being with others who are fully present in the room.
Yeah. And I think to add on to that, it does change, to use the example of me with my friends. Well, that was what, 13, 14 years ago. We haven't done that in a long time. Maybe since year one, the name stuck, hang up and hang out stuck. My text thread is still hoo ho. That's what we refer to Wednesday nights as hoo ho. But the ritual or like the kind of physical act that we had to do in the beginning to kind of break the habit, set the norm. And I mean, I think for us, part of it was just like, and we made it fun where it's like, if you reach for your phone, you got to get everybody's tabs. The point being, we don't actually even have to do that anymore because now the expectation around this is how we engage, this is what makes better, richer time is so embedded. Now, I say that if we were to bring someone new into the group, then I feel like having that ritual would actually be a very important thing to kind of signal to other people that are coming in. But at some point, I think my point is our behaviors actually change what we desire and what we want. To your point, people freak out when the phone is taken away. And then when they actually have the opportunity to give it back, there has been an internal shift. They no longer require the kind of external forcing factor because the external forcing factor actually gave them an embodied experience that like now they're like, I choose this. This is a better way of being. So good. Wait, what was what was the thread of thought? Did I lose? We already did we were kind of going through, sorry. We were
Big
going through
events,
the
we think it
anecdotes.
looks glamorous and
Yes. Okay. Yep.
it doesn't. And then people fill our time with entertainment.
Entertainment.
And
That was the screen. So then we can jump to the third one, which is
the
just
third
the
one, yeah,
go get bed sores.
what I found is it is unfortunate that this is a profound idea, and that is that quiet and silence matters.
Mm-hmm.
And this pushes against this assumption of our time that we all need to be entertained all the time. Liz, I know you're old enough that there have been really scary times in your life. I don't mean scary like, oh, gee, we can't get the right dinner reservation. I mean, like, I don't know if this friend's going to make it. And my guess is, while you were getting through that, uh, you knew that you didn't want people to show up and demonstrate their witty repartee. What you really wanted and would have made a difference and hopefully did was the friend who knew they could come in and needed to say nothing. We call that hold the space. And when we relearn as a culture the profundity and importance of silence and the quiet, then we'll have access again to the relationships that are really rich and powerful when we need them.
I love it. One of the most loved I have ever felt in my whole life as it relates to an event with my second son when I got pregnant. Instead of having a baby shower, my friends didn't even tell me this. Instead of having a baby shower, they came over to my house. It's going to sound really weird. I might edit this out because I feel like this could be taken out of context. Everybody came in their pajamas, walked up to my room, 6 of us, just flopped in my bed We flopped in my bed in my pajamas and just kinda laid on the bed and chatted about motherhood. And, like, no pomp, no circumstances, no gifts, no big, like, thing, but it was like the intimacy and just, like, the knowing again,
The
I think
safety.
safety and so unglamorous. Like, that 6 middle-aged women in kinda crappy pajamas flopped on a bed in a bedroom does not make for a great Pinterest board for a baby shower
What
that's
would have been better than that?
aspirational. What would have been better? Literally, what would have been better? And I felt so loved and so known. And so I also hope that that's an encouragement to folks. Shoot, sorry. I also hope that's an encouragement to people who honestly, like me, I'm not an event planner. Like the details, the this, the flowers, the that, I get very overwhelmed by it. I don't find a lot of joy in it. And I know that there are people out there who are like me who think that that's going to preclude you from being somebody who can create meaningful spaces. And what I hear Charles saying is actually not only does that not preclude you, that actually you might actually go on to create more sacred, intimate, meaningful spaces that are quiet and simple
Well,
and intentional.
according to you, bed with 6 women in cruddy pajamas could be peak friendship in a really challenging time.
Yeah. Peak. Peak.
Peak.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
wouldn't have been any better if you put 6 TVs on the walls. In fact, it would have been a disaster.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, so good. Well, I could
So
keep
I want to share just this week. I was with a friend of mine, um, and her name is Anne. And Anne is a famous chef, and she has a James Beard Award. And by virtue of that, people invite her around and look to her. And I was sharing about how we very often need to reduce the production value of our gatherings. For exactly the reasons
yeah.
you referenced,
Yeah.
is that people don't create them because they're like, oh, I got to pick colors and I got to get flowers. And I shared that while I'm a pretty good cook, and we've been hosting dinners for 20 years, now that I have a kid, sometimes it's frozen pizza at our house. My wife's favorite frozen pizza, but if it's frozen pizza, and I tell my friends ahead of time, they're not surprised. Anne leaned over and said, I have a pizza restaurant. This is an award-winning chef. I have frozen pizza in my freezer, she said. And she said, none of my friends will invite me for dinner because they don't want me at their dinner party. And
Mm,
I want to get invited for frozen pizza. So this week, James Beard Award-winning chef said, I want to get invited for frozen pizza
yeah.
so I can spend time with my friends.
So good.
If that's
What a
not
beautiful
permission for
story.
everybody to invite anybody for frozen pizza or bulk purchased hot dogs or um, marshmallows on a stick, then I don't know what to say.
Yeah. Yeah. And not only are you that person wants to be invited, but I also believe your willingness to go lo-fi have a messy house, have frozen pizza actually creates so much freedom and permission to your
Mhm.
guests to then invite you over in a messy house for frozen pizza. So there's just it's so cyclical and like our willingness it serves people who desperately want to be invited into the messy house and it also gives permission for those who might be holding themselves back to go like my house isn't beautiful enough. It's not, it's not curated enough. It's not the food isn't good enough. That the moment that we go first and say like this is good enough, this is a good enough offering, and not only is it good enough, it might be better. It might be better
It can
depending
be
on
better.
what the intention of the evening and the gathering is. Gives
Well,
so
Liz,
much
on this
permission and
note, let
freedom.
me reference because I can see you're excited this idea that we can create events without production value that are powerful. So let me just share to your audience on my website, which is Charles Vogl, charlesvogl.com. If you go to growth resources, there are downloads and for free. We've created guidelines to make any events better at connecting. And I'm only offering this because it's free. And then once you download it, you can share it as widely as you want. You never have to email me or ask permission. And so we have 2 versions. We have downloads for community events in general, and we've rewritten them just to speak to certain audiences that have particularly picked up on my work, and anyone can pick the one they want. And then for those who really want to go deep and create an extraordinary experience, we've released a host packet that we call Sacred Dinners for Deep Friendship. And it codifies lessons we've learned for the last 20 years hosting people in our home and in different time zones to create an experience that does not need extraordinary food. Chips and salsa totally counts. Hot dogs totally count. With the guidelines, you'll understand principles that will make that lo-fi experience extraordinary for friendship. And you can wear not nice pajamas, and it would still work.
Bonus.
That's right.
Bonus.
Now, for those who want to invite a chef to make a fantastic meal or want to spend 6 hours preparing, you can. But when you understand these principles, even the lo-fi can be extraordinary. And quite frankly, as someone who cooks a lot, I really like it when someone makes me a meal a grandmother fed them,
Mm,
and that means something to them,
yeah.
and I get to have that hot meal and not worry about if it would win James Beard Award.
So good. So good. Well, thank you for creating that resource. We are going to link it. If you follow me, I'm sure you're going to see it in different platforms. I'm going to be sharing it widely because I think that you're taking, again, I think it's articulating what is typically not articulated in the power of that. It's so empowering. It's so profound. It's not magic. It's not mystique. It's not like you got it or you don't. There's some simple rules that you can follow. So thank you so much for the work that you do to do just that, to say like, hey, actually, we can name this, we can put some general rules around it, and then you are actually capable of building a life of connection and community that's going to benefit you, it's going to benefit your family, and it's going to benefit all of those who are in the orbit. And so thank you so much for the work that you're doing in the world. I know that you know this, but it matters now more than ever, and I'm super grateful for you.
I'm delighted that you invited me to share these thoughts with your audience, and I'm hopeful that we inspire actions that lead to relationships that, without exaggeration, echo for a generation.
Thanks, Charles.